Welcome to today's Explainer. I am literally so thrilled you're here because we're going on an absolutely fascinating journey today. We're going to completely demystify how our bodies actually power themselves. We'll trace the everyday, kind of invisible magic of respiration, all the way from microscopic cellular fuel right down to the intricate architecture of the human airway.
Here's our quick roadmap for today. We're going to start with the true purpose of breathing. Then we'll look at the different types of cellular respiration. From there, we'll explore respiration across the animal kingdom, dive right into human respiratory anatomy, and finally, we'll trace the exact step-by-step route of the air we breathe.
Okay, let's dive right into section 1, the true purpose of breathing. Let's start by busting a major misconception. Why do we actually breathe? If you ask most people, they'll probably just say, to get oxygen so we don't die, right? But honestly, that's really only half the story. The physical act of inhaling and exhaling is just the very first mechanical step in a much, much deeper biological demand. We actually breathe in oxygen because our bodies absolutely need it to indirectly break down the nutrients inside us. We're talking about things like glucose, fatty acids, and amino acids. You see, your body operates just like an engine. We literally take in oxygen to burn that cellular fuel, which then produces ATP. That's the actual energy currency of your body. And just like any engine, it leaves behind exhaust. In our case, carbon dioxide is the waste product, which we then just exhale right back out.
So the absolutely crucial point here is making a clear distinction between just breathing and true respiration. Breathing is really just the physical process of moving air in and out. But respiration, that's a broad catabolic process. And catabolic just means it breaks things down. In this case, breaking down those nutrients for energy. Physical breathing is really just the doorway to that massive biochemical event. To fully appreciate this whole shebang, let's walk progressively through the 5 exact steps of respiration. Step 1 is simply that physical breathing from the atmosphere. Step 2 is the initial gas exchange at the lungs, where oxygen actually enters the blood. Then step 3 is the transport of those gases through your circulatory system. Step 4 is the second gas exchange, where oxygen is finally delivered from the blood into your actual tissues. And finally, step 5. This is where the real magic happens, the cellular utilization of that oxygen to produce ATP, and tossing out the CO2 to ride the conveyor belt all the way back out. Moving right along to section 2, types of cellular respiration. Now, once that oxygen has finally made it to the cells, its presence, or interestingly, its sudden absence, completely alters how the body's internal engine runs. Aerobic respiration happens when oxygen is present. This causes the complete oxidation of glucose and ends neatly with high-energy ATP, water, and CO2. But what if there's no oxygen? Well, the cell quickly shifts into anaerobic respiration. This results in an incomplete oxidation. It yields very little energy, and it leaves behind heavy byproducts, things like lactic acid or ethanol.
And it's super interesting to look at exactly where these processes happen within our cells. For aerobic respiration, glucose breaks down into pyruvate in the cytoplasm, but then it rapidly moves into the mitochondria, the famous powerhouse of the cell, to actually finish the job. Anaerobic respiration, on the other hand, is confined entirely to the cytoplasm. It literally never gets to use the powerhouse at all. And it's wild to look at the different end products anaerobic respiration leaves behind, depending on the specific organism. In things like yeast and anaerobic bacteria, it produces ethanol and carbon dioxide. In endoparasites, it makes lactic acid. But here's the crazy part. Our own human exercising muscles will actually resort to anaerobic respiration when they run out of oxygen during a really heavy workout. That produces the lactic acid that makes your muscles physically burn. Even more fascinating, our red blood cells actually rely on it permanently, simply because they completely lack mitochondria. No way, right? Let's shift gears a bit. Section 3, respiration in the animal kingdom. It's time to zoom way out from the microscopic level and explore how different species have actually solved this exact same biological problem of gas exchange. Evolutionary breathing mechanisms aren't just random, The specific respiratory structures an animal develops depend primarily on 2 major factors. First, their level of biological organization, essentially how complex their bodies are. And second, their habitat. Whether they live deep underwater or up in the dry air makes a massive difference. When we look at this brilliant evolutionary diversity, we see simple lower organisms like sponges or flatworms exchanging gases directly across their body surface.
Insects, meanwhile, utilize a really cool network of tracheal tubes. Aquatic arthropods evolved gills or book gills. Amphibians, they can literally breathe right through their moist skin in a process known as cutaneous respiration. And finally, for higher vertebrates like mammals, birds, and reptiles, evolution settled on complex internal lungs for pulmonary respiration.
Okay, pop quiz time. Let's test your newly acquired evolutionary knowledge. Based on what we literally just covered, which of these animal to respiratory organ matchings is actually correct? Is it A, insect and trachea, B, scorpion and book gills, C, fishes and skin, or D, limulus and book lungs? Think about it for a second. All right, let's see how you did. The correct answer is A. Insects use a trachea. All the others are mismatched tricks. Scorpions actually use book lungs, not book gills. Fishes, of course, use branchial gills, definitely not their skin. And the limulus, also known as the horseshoe crab, uses book gills, not book lungs. It's just a fantastic illustration of how perfectly adapted these organs are to their specific evolutionary niches. Let's zoom back in. Section 4, the human respiratory anatomy. Coming back from the vast animal kingdom, we arrive at the highly specialized, super-evolved anatomy of our own bodies. Our respiratory system spans all the way from the external nostrils right on your face, all the way down to the microscopic alveoli buried deep in your chest. To really understand how this operates, biologists broadly split this entire intricate pathway into two very specialized functional portions. Those two parts are the conducting portion and the respiratory portion. Think of the conducting zone as the prep team. It transports the air, traps foreign particles, brings the air up to body temperature, humidifies it, and it even handles sound production. It's basically a brilliant biological air conditioning duct. But the respiratory portion? That is the highly vascular site where the true action happens. That's the physical exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the lungs and the blood. Okay, final stretch, Section 5, tracing the route of air. Let's treat the respiratory pathway as a literal step-by-step roadmap. When you take a breath, the air enters your external nostril, flows right into the nasal chamber, and exits the internal nostril. From there, it drops into the pharynx, passes through the glottis, and moves directly into your larynx, which you probably know as your voice box. Continuing downwards, it enters the windpipe, or the trachea. Now at this point, the airway begins to branch out, just like an upside-down tree inside your chest. It splits into the primary bronchi for each lung, branches further into secondary and tertiary bronchi, and then gets incredibly narrow as it passes through the initial and terminal bronchioles. Finally, the epic journey ends deep in the respiratory zone at the alveoli. These are millions of tiny, highly vascular, balloon-like sacs where oxygen finally crosses over into your bloodstream. It is an absolutely astonishing system. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought. The next time you take a deep, simple inhale, will you picture that microscopic oxygen rushing down your trachea, into your alveoli, into your blood, and finally deep inside the mitochondria of your very own cells to ignite the ATP that powers your entire life? It kind of makes you appreciate every single breath a whole lot more, doesn't it? Thank you so much for exploring the incredible science of respiration with me. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.